Métis Crossing is not only Alberta, but Canada's first major Métis destination. And we are a place that shares and celebrates the Métis history and culture. We started as a dream of the Métis Nation decades ago. So the Métis people have been known as the roadside allowance people. We've been hidden in plain sight. We're half-breeds, and there are lots of things that are said about us, and never in history have we really had an opportunity to share our side of the story. So our elders, our knowledge holders, our leaders of the past always talked about having a place to call our own, a place to gather, a place to share who we are. And so actually in 1999, the Métis Nation of Alberta underwent a study, and it was called the Métis Millennium Voyage. And they went throughout the province of Alberta, from north, south, east, west, really looking for all of those places of Métis significance, historic Métis significance. And they actually identified over 60 sites. They went back through these sites, then evaluating them based on their capacity to be a tourism destination. And they landed on what is now Métis Crossing. And then in 2001, our provincial council of the day, which is the governing body for the Métis Nation, took a leap and decided to take this dream and make it a reality. And they bought 512 acres of land in the Victoria District National Historic Site and started working on what is now Métis Crossing. And we had a centennial opening in 2005, which really restored some of the existing buildings on the site. So the historic barn, the homesteads. We added some pretty critical visitor infrastructure like parking lots and toilets. They seem to always want those. We added some trails, and then we operated seasonally up until 2019, and that's when we completed our cultural gathering center. I consider myself kind of a master puzzle maker, and our citizens have talked about the many things that they want to do when they gather, the many stories that they want to share. And so where Métis Crossing comes from is from a need within a community, the need of our nation to come together, the need of our nation to gather and share stories with each other, but also to celebrate who we are and to recognize and acknowledge the contributions that the Métis people, the Métis Nation has made within Canada. We are a critical element of the history of Canada. We've contributed to the development of Canada, and we're still here today and will be here in thousands of years to come. So Métis Crossing really comes from the desire of a nation to share that and to celebrate that. One of the main things that Métis Crossing wants to be is a tool for reconciliation. So a safe place to ask difficult questions. So we're coming to a place now in Canada's history where people are asking the questions. They're wanting to understand how different groups worked together to build this great nation. And it's great to be in a nation that now has a voice to say, this is what we've done in Canada, and add our perspective. So Canada's history has been written from a perspective in many ways, and we're adding to that. We're contributing our perspective, which provides a much better understanding of how Canada came to be. We are located in the county of Smoky Lake, inside the Victoria District National Historic Site, which is an hour and a half northeast of Edmonton, or 3 days by Voyageur canoe. And that's important because the place that we're actually located is right along the North Saskatchewan River. It is a place where we have actually had archaeological dig sites that show inhabitation of 8,000 years. So it is a place where very traditionally the First Nations from the south and from the north would come together at that point along the river and trade. Because they were already there, the Hudson's Bay Company found this location, built a trading fort there called Fort Victoria. And there's also a Methodist missionary site there with McDougall Mission Site. And they settled the area because the First Nations were already there trading. And then they went back to the Red River Colony and invited Métis families to come further west. So it's right along the Victoria Trail, which is a component of the Carleton Trail. And that would have been the original highway. So when the Métis families came west along the Victoria Trail, they settled in this area. And it was one of the largest, most bustling communities in Alberta in the 1860s to early 1900s. Cool story I just want to share. So when the Métis people settled, they settled in river lots, which meant that their houses were beside the river. Then they had their gardens, they had their animals a little bit to the north, and then they would have had some cropland and some woodlot, again, on the end part of their property. But their houses were kind of close to each other along Victoria Trail, and that helped to build a sense of community that we had. And down the road from us, there was a fiddler, Ben Sinclair. and he was part of our Métis community. And stories tell us that when it was time to gather, when it was time to have a harvest dinner or a birthday party or a wedding, Ben would get into his wagon and fiddle along Victoria Trail. And that was the announcement, that was the old social media, the way to get everyone to know that it was time to come to the Cromarty Barn, where Métis Crossing now sits, and to gather and to celebrate as a community. So we're really reestablishing that community gathering place, that place to come together and to celebrate. So it is very historically significant, and we're really building up that traditional purpose that this piece of land in Métis history has had. It's because the community wants it. It's because the community drives what we're doing. So everything that we have in Métis Crossing has come from community engagement. So the dreaming of Métis Crossing, the planning of Métis Crossing, the design of Métis Crossing, the construction of our building, and the operation has all been Métis driven. So the general contractor that built this, Genmac ACL out of Bonnyville, they're 50% Métis owned. Tiffany Shaw Collins, our architect that designed the building, is a Métis person. And she birthed a baby and became Canada's 18th Indigenous architect, all while doing this. So I think it's pretty amazing. So I think that what's really important about Métis Crossing is the community engagement in what we do. We often have people stopping by to say, hey, I was part of building that trailer or that trail, or my uncle was one of the electricians. Even in the procurement process, when we were working on the construction of our $8.5 million gathering center, one of the criteria was your engagement of Métis subtrades, Métis tradespeople, Métis laborers, Métis suppliers. And 40% of the labor hired to build this building was Métis, which is just phenomenal. It's wonderful engagement from our community. It has that buy-in from our community. The initial money that was used to purchase the property was actually a donation from 3 Métis entrepreneurs. So the community engagement in what we're doing is the foundation of who we are as an Indigenous destination. I talk about we'll be inviting visitors from near and far, but we're also having our own child and family services. We do training programs. We do Métis specific training for public services, for corporations. The foster kids that are Métis children that are in the foster system are brought to Métis Crossing to learn about who they are. Lily Rose, I talked about her being the heart, and we talk a lot about she used to drive for children and family services to do supervised visits. And she shared a story with me that she had to pick up Métis children and bring them to their cookums, and they met in a food court in a mall to exchange Christmas gifts. And she said, I just sat there and I cried, because what I want is to bring them here. And now we have that place where those family gatherings, where those opportunities to come together can happen at Métis Crossing for different families. So the heart of us as an international destination comes from the authenticity of us as a true gathering place for Métis people. At this point, we honestly don't know when the provincial restrictions will lift and allow us to open as a cultural gathering center. Our early planning is for June 25th. We hope that by that point, there are enough needles and arms that people can start to gather again. And the great thing about Métis Crossing is we have 688 acres. So the cultural gathering center that you see behind me right now is one small piece of what we have to offer. So even if it's only exterior gatherings we can bring people to Métis Crossing. We have a great walk in our mocks experience, which is archery, and we take you out and talk about how we would have tracked animals, our connection to the land, and then you learn how to shoot 3D archery targets. Our historic village and our harvesting camp are outside, so we'll be able to still safely bring our visitors through the area. So we're very hopeful that we can bring people to our wide open spaces to see the river, to learn, to appreciate why our Métis ancestors would have stopped there and said, this is where I want to build my home, because it is just that beautiful. So we are very hopeful that we will be able to do those sorts of things. So we will be open as general admission, so you can come and have self-guided tours. We will also have our signature experience. And something new this year is we want to have storytellers. So if you want to come and have a more intimate experience at Métis Crossing, you can actually arrange to have a storyteller go through the site with you and share the Métis stories as you're wandering through. We also, at our campground this winter, will have Friday and Saturday nights tall tales by the fire with our elders. So you can sit around the bonfire and hear some of our tall tales. So we have lots that we expect to be able to see and do this summer. We're just waiting to do it safely for our team and especially for our visitors. So watch MétisCrossing.com and we'll be doing regular updates there in terms of when we are able to open everything. And we are year round, so building on that, even if this summer we do have Tales of the Trapline, so an outside experience where we take you, we strap on some snowshoes and we go to track animals in the woods, we set a snare, we talk about shelter building, and then we do Métis crafts inside the gathering center as well. We're getting our new culinary program ready, so you'll be able to eat some contemporary Indigenous food, which means it comes from our land. It comes with traditional ingredients like bison and trout and Saskatoons and raspberries and all those sorts of things. Great things. We have huge ambitions for Métis Crossing within our own community as well as for the broader community. We are building a 40-room boutique lodge, so it should be completed this fall, which means that year-round people can come visit at Métis Crossing. We're building on top of the Tales of the Trapline, we're building star watching programs, so come out and hear the Indigenous stories of the stars. So we want to build Métis Crossing as a destination. We are an hour and a half outside of Edmonton, and I think given COVID, given many larger impacts on our world, people are looking for those experiences to learn more, to experience more, and to build themselves from the inside out. And I think Métis Crossing will be that ideal place where we can do that close to home. We talk about local food, we talk about our Indigenous culture, we talk about ways to connect to land, to connect to community. And we want to be a major destination for people locally within Alberta, first of all, but also nationally and internationally to come and learn about who we are and to be an example of an Indigenous destination that really shares the story from the heart and is very successful in doing so.